Well, good morning. When you hear Randy talk about great potential, you hear Sean talk about the great attributes and the great successes of a father and the great times that you set up daily prayer and daily installation of hope and faith. If it's maybe just me, I sit there and think, I missed the boat on a couple of things. Is that just me as a dad? As a person, I look back and I say, well, I don't know if I did all of those things. But who likes dessert in here? Who likes dessert? I love dessert. And sometimes whenever I go to a restaurant, sometimes I just want to have dessert first. So I'm going to give you dessert first. Is that okay? I got stuff planned. Don't worry. We're going to get into it. I'm going to give you some dessert first. There's hope. So y'all don't feel it yet. So there's hope. The one thing that God talked to Abraham about was his promises. Right? In verse chapter 19, the very end of that verse, it talks about his great promises. And it says, so should we tell him these promises? Can y'all put that up on the screen, please? There it is. So that the Lord may bring upon Abraham what he has spoken about him. What's interesting, though, is if you don't know Abraham's story, you don't know what he's spoken about him. Right? So Genesis chapter 12 is what he gets. He goes and says, get out of your country, from your family, and from your father's house to a land that I will show you. I will make you a great nation. I will bless you. I will make your name great and shall be a blessing. I will bless those who bless you. I will curse those who curse you. And all the families of the earth shall be blessed. That's what God is talking about there in verse 19. So that the Lord may bring upon Abraham what he's spoken about him. Those are great promises. Those are great. Could you imagine being Abraham hearing those things? But sometimes we know there's great promises and we hear there's great promises, but sometimes our life takes turns and twists that we didn't expect. So I'm going to ask you a question if you're so brave. Let me ask you this question. When you were 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, that age, and you pictured your life, and you pictured the steps of your life, how many of you can say, my life turned out exactly how I planned it? Nobody. I'll join you with that. Now let me ask you a different question. How many of you sitting here today can say, I remember the words and the promises that God gave me, and although it may not have taken the approach that I thought it would, his promises are true? If that's to you, will you raise your hand so people can see that? There's your hope. There's the hope. See, sometimes our lives and their families, they don't look like what we expect. Right? If you look back at your family, and I'll talk about my lineage, right? It looks like a soap opera. It looks like a Netflix series. Anybody else with that, right? There's racism, there's adultery, there's divorce, there's addiction, there's suicide. Now we start saying, what? That's the reality of life. Those aren't things that I would have said, this is what I intended. When I look back at grandfathers and great-grandfathers, or even further back, there are things that when I look at that, and I even look down into my life and my family, I say, wait a minute, there's dysfunction. And when we read Abraham's story, a lot of times we don't know there's dysfunction. We hear Abraham, he's in the chapter of faith in Hebrews, and we see his story and we think, man, Abraham, that was awesome. But you know, Abraham lied about his wife all the time. Right? You read, and I'm not going to get deep into this, but if you read after he goes to sacrifice his son Isaac, it actually mentions that he and his wife are 30 miles apart when she dies. Dysfunction. When you read the begat chapter in Matthew chapter 1, who's read begats? You know what I'm talking about? This person begat, this person begat, this person begat, this person begat, right? You go all that way down. Who does it start with? Abraham. Who does it end with? Jesus. There's hope. I think Matthew was airing a little dirty laundry in there as well, right? Because he says, and David begat Solomon, who was from his mother Bathsheba, who was the wife to Uriah, right? I think he was saying, hey, if you don't know the story about David, he had a man killed so he could take his wife, and then they had a baby, named him Solomon. But guess what? God's promises are true, and it still led down to Jesus. Sometimes you, not to glorify dysfunction, but sometimes you have to find the fun in dysfunction, because I think every single one of us have it. Nobody liked that joke? Okay. See, I look back at my life and I think of the great promises, and how many of y'all know that sometimes in your life, if you're a parent, sometimes you get troubled for your kids. Right? Do you know what I'm talking about? Sometimes it's like it's deep. Sometimes it's just, and you pray and you're troubled. I was having one of these days. I was having one of these moments. And like I said, my perfect is not what my family looks like. There's been some estrangement in my family. And there was one day that I was really just dealing with some issues. I was troubled for my kids. So Heather and I got in the car. We drove to a different town completely, and we said, let's go have dinner. So we had dinner. And like I told you earlier, I like dessert, in case you don't know. So I said, let's go get some dessert. So we left dinner. We started walking around, and I was like, I don't feel like dessert. Let's just keep walking. And, she knew what I was going through. She knew what I was thinking. So she didn't say, man, I really wanted ice cream, and you ruined the night. She said, okay. So we just kept walking. And we're walking, and finally we get to a point where we walk back to our car, and from behind me, I hear my name get called. Mark. And I'm like, not about me. Not tonight. You don't want it. I can promise you that. And then I heard it again, Mark. And I turned around, and I saw someone who for 7 years, their blood that races through their veins also races through mine. Okay? For 7 years, I haven't seen them, haven't talked to them, haven't been around them. But I prayed. I prayed for them. And I said, God, I turned around and there was this connection. There was this, it was an immediate, amazing time. And there's some restoration that's going on there. But I was walking back to the car. I opened the door for Heather. She got in. I was walking around to the front of the car. And I heard God speak this to me. And I will replay it in my brain forever. And it's nothing y'all could do to take it away from me. He said, see how I took care of them? I'll take care of your boys too. That's a promise. That's one of those great promises. When Abraham looked at his life and he was 75 years old when he was told to leave, he didn't know. He said, I don't even have kids of my own. I don't even know what you're talking about. I got my nephew talking about being fathers to others. I got my nephew with me. I'm going to bring him along, but I don't know what you're talking about. Later down the road, we get to this verse in chapter 15, verse 6, where God's talking to him and he's saying, hey, I am going to make you nations. And what does Abraham say? How? I don't even have a son. How are you going to do it? And God told him, I'm going to do this for you. And what does Abraham say in verse 15:6? He says, he believed. That's why he's in the chapter of faith, because he believed. And so many of us have promises that are given to us over and over and over, and sometimes we just need to say, I believe. It doesn't look like it. It doesn't sound like it. It's not going to be what I thought it was. It doesn't look anything like I expected. But I believe. His faith. He had great faith. He had great promises, and he had great faith. And you know what? The people around him learned that great faith. If you read on about Isaac, his son, by the way, he gets a son. If you read on Isaac about his son, it says Isaac goes out into a field to meditate. Where did he learn that? Where did Isaac learn how to pray? His dad. Lot, we know the story about Lot. We know about his issues, right? But there was always something about God with him. Why? because he watched his uncle. So if you are an uncle or a father or a stepfather or a brother taking care of your kids, or maybe you're a mom stepping in for a dad, the promises are there. But what's the last step? I told you there's hope. Everybody excited about the hope? Amen? There's hope. You got to get excited about the hope, even when it doesn't look like it. But he had to do something. Whenever God spoke to him for the first time, he said, get up and leave, and this is what's going to happen. What if our boy Abraham just sat back and said, that sounds incredible, but not me. I really like it here. This is my spot. God ever spoken to you and you said, not me, not it. Abraham had to make a choice. So great promises, great faith come with great choices. Day by day by day. I was sitting over there before we started in the first service, and I put my phone over there, and it's still over there because I didn't want to get text messages, but I forgot I was wearing a smartwatch, so I still get them, right? So they're down on my phone, and it's cool having pastor friends on Father's Day because they're trying out their sermons on me by sending me happy little text messages. So I got a text from one of my best friends who happens to be a pastor, and he says, you know what? Happy Father's Day. We didn't get it all right, but at least we showed up every day trying. And I said, that's true. I said, now I know you're testing your sermon out on me, so I didn't respond to him yet. I'll wait till later. But it's a choice. It was a choice. Abraham had a choice every day. Every day. Whenever he had to get up and move his family, it was a choice. When he had to say, I'm going to listen to my God about the son of promise, and I'm going to go and I'm going to sacrifice him, it was a choice. And that's where we come today. We're talking about mission possible, not impossible. Mission possible. And I don't know about you, but I know there are plenty of things I missed the boat on. I grew up in church, been saved since I was 4. I remember the day I got saved. I could tell you everything about it, what it smelled like, what it was like. I remember the day. But I also remember the decisions I've made since then, and they haven't always been good. But at some point, there's a choice where you say, I'm gonna go back to him. I'm gonna go back to God. I'm gonna go back, and I'm gonna do it again, and I'm gonna try again, just like Abraham tried it again after he said, hey, this is my sister. Just kidding, Pharaoh. It's actually my wife. He went to the next place. He said, I'm not gonna do that again. And the next time he gets to another place, he's like, no, she's my sister. She's not my wife. He's like, dude, you didn't learn. How many of us have not learned some things? But it's about a choice. And it's about the promise. It's about knowing that your choices, it's a long game. It's the long game. If anybody's an investor in here, you don't ever invest in like the right now kind of thing. My son taught me some of that. He said, put your money in the long stocks, Dad. Because you never invest for things right now. Abraham couldn't see. When he died, it mentions 8 sons around him. Do you think that he could have seen the generations after generations after generations after generations? No. But he said, I'm going to do what I'm going to do right now. I'm going to make the choice that I need to make right now. Because I know there's generations. There's generations that need to know who my God is. So as men today, that's our choice. I'm not asking you today to make a choice I'm going to get up and I'm going to pray for 4 hours and read 13 chapters every single day. Because guess what? That ain't going to happen. I'm not going to ask you to sit here and get on a fasting journey and do a 40-day fast, because unless God called you to that, you're going to die. But here's what I'm going to ask you to do. I'm going to ask you to make a choice to be better than yesterday. That's it. I think every single one of us in here can make that choice. So why don't we all stand, and I'm going to ask Pastor to come up. And here is what this altar call looks like today. Maybe you don't have maybe you haven't made the choice for salvation. Maybe all this talk about Abraham is brand new. Maybe you have no idea what this is about. Well, today's your day. Today's your day to say, I want to know more about who God is in my life, and I want to choose him today. And if that's you, I want you to come up. But I also want all the men, the fathers, the stepdads, the brothers, those that have played a role, spiritual fathers, all of those who say, I want to make a choice. And this could be as young as you guys want. If this ministers to you, if this connects with any of you, I don't care if you're 12. But if there's a choice you want to make to be better than you were yesterday, then I'm going to ask you to come up, and I hope you do. Because this moment is a choice that could impact generation after generation after generation. You have the ability to bring hope to your family. Amen.